As you guys know, we will be starting our first parent information and training over feeding and swallowing. As I mentioned, we are recording now. We just started it. If you're not comfortable, just shut off your cameras. We want this to be as interactive and beneficial for you all as it can be. So anytime you have questions, you can just send it in and we will ask our three presenters. We have Lacy, Belinda, and Teresa.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lacy Cary. I am a BCABA here at Heartspring. I have been at Heartspring since, I did the math on my slide, I think it's 2008. I started in our ABA department in 2013, got my BCABA in 2015, and then my BCBA in February of last year. So they kind of call me homegrown around here. Do we have our PowerPoint, Carla?
I think you're muted, Carla.
You're muted.
Of course. I shared my share screen, so you guys should be able to pull it up. And if you can't, let me know and I have it.
I can't see it. Does anybody else see the PowerPoint?
No, I have mine pulled up.
I can go ahead and just share it on my screen.
I was having internet issues, so I just had to reconnect. So were you asking if I was going to share?
Do you have access to share it? Can you share it?
I can.
Okay, perfect.
There you go. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes. There we go.
Okay, is this where you are?
Sure.
Okay.
A little bit more about my background. In August of this year, I started doing the Family Empowerment Program, which is offering in-home parent training, because my passion is really with coming with a partnership with our families, providing that in-home treatment so that I can provide the principles and techniques of ABA and teach those skill sets to parents that they will be able to use throughout the duration of their child's life and long after ABA is discontinued. So that's kind of where my passion is, and that's what brought me here with everyone today. So, okay, so identifying your why. Oh, go back.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. It's really important that we identify our why with most anything that we do. Without our why, we are not able to remain committed to those things that are important to us. I would like to first say that we recognize and admire you for doing the best you can and seeking to learn new and different ways of doing things at home. Change is never easy, but if it's something that's truly important to you and it aligns with the values that are important for you, your child, and your family, the hard work will be worth it. I think that goes for most things in our life, but especially when it comes to our kids. But change is never easy. So it does require some dedication and commitment if that's something that you're truly wanting for you and your child. And that just begins with small changes. It doesn't have to be we completely redo everything that we've done up to this point. We just make small steps moving in the right direction. So when I was in my grad program, I did a lot of research on parent training, primarily around mealtime. And one of the reasons it said that mealtime is so important is because that's one of the few times of the day when the entire family stops what they're doing and they come together. everything kind of gets put on pause. So as moms, we want that to go as smoothly as possible because that is a precious moment in our day. And if food or feeding or things that go along with mealtime evoke problem behavior, that could be seen as something that is aversive. We just want everything to be peaceful for this one brief moment in time when we're all together. So that decreases the likelihood of us wanting to implement change. And so coming here and learning new ways to make that go as smoothly as possible for you and your family is highly commendable, in my opinion. So many of you might know techniques and ways to improve that, but there's reasons that may have prevented you from doing so. So I kind of want to ask these questions to identify why it is that you're here and you're wanting to learn more. So I'm a bit curious as to what you guys have tried in the past, what obstacles those strategies have presented for you to prevent further progression. And then why is this a topic that's so important for you, your child, and your family? Identifying those reasons is really what's going to help us to making change and moving forward with progress. Because if it were easy, none of us would be here, right? Next slide, please. Okay, so identifying your reality is how we kind of go into acceptance. I've done a lot of training in action and commitment therapy, and what it really takes in order to be committed to do the action it takes for change. So identifying your reality happens in a few different ways. Your reality might be, my child's just a picky eater. Your reality may be, as mentioned before, mealtime with my family is really important to me. And if I make changes, it might not go as smoothly as it is now. So that's why we do what we do. So essentially just things are the way they are because why for your particular family. Because suffering, this is a good quote, begins the moment when we wish the present is different than it actually is. If we're constantly saying, I wish my child would just do this. I wish that I could do that. I wish, that's when the suffering begins. Kind of accepting where we are now is kind of the beginning for change. Oh, I missed the last one. There we go. So then another question to ask yourself is, does my current approach align with my desire for change? Oftentimes we do what we do because it works, but you guys are all here because you're wanting to learn something new and something different. So just taking those small steps so that your behavior aligns with your desire for change. Next. Okay. So some of the obstacles that you may have faced when trying to work on feeding or swallowing for your child is difficult because oftentimes we are apprehensive or afraid to evoke problem behavior or disrupt our current environment. We dread what needs to be done. We know that we're going to implement some changes tonight, and that makes us a little anxious going into mealtime. Oftentimes we question or critique ourselves or our child from a critical standpoint, and that goes back to accepting things as is. If in the moment you're like, oh no, this isn't going as planned, everything's going not smoothly, that could really change how we are able to continue with progression. Another obstacle we may face is trying to precisely replicate what we've been told works. I'm real into analogies. I kind of was thinking about an analogy that would work for this, and it was like following a recipe. I made a recipe. I went through all of the steps. I did all the things I was supposed to do, and the food just didn't taste that good. Odds of us trying that recipe again greatly decrease. So when we are trying to precisely follow what we've been told to do, if it doesn't work out well, that's going to decrease the likelihood that we're going to do it again. Another obstacle that we may face is the do as I say mentality, which goes along with trying to replicate what we've been told to do. I tell you this is a strategy you could use. That is a do as I say. So whether that's regarding treatment or just towards our child, that's not how we create long-term effects. That makes us very rigid and flexible, unable to kind of go back into that acceptance of seeing things exactly as they are because we're too busy trying to follow all of those steps, which only leads to escape or avoidance behavior for ourselves. I don't want to do that again. That wasn't fun. That didn't work. And then there's also the concept of the self-condemnation that comes because as parents, I feel as though we are often our own worst critic. And that negative self-talk is going to prevent your clarity in the moment. If you're like, oh no, this isn't going well, I can't do this, in the moment, that's going to prevent you from continuing with your progression, which is only going to result in one of two ways, which is either we become really lax, we forfeit, we give up, or we overreact in order to try to make something work that's not working in the present moment. Mindful awareness is that self-talk, because negative self-talk prevents your clarity in the present moment. And that's what we just talked about.
Sorry.
That's okay. So when implementing change, first off, if we implement change during mealtime, it is likely that our children are not going to be quite receptive to that because we are changing something that they are accustomed to. Rather than having that come to us from left field, we need to go into that expecting it, but to see it as an opportunity for growth and not as disaster. Because if we are committed to change, if it doesn't work, that's okay, because we're going to try again tomorrow. We've learned today from our attempted, and we will go forward tomorrow with a different game plan. And I kind of feel like that aligns with, again, my analogies, a football game. I had to ask for guidance on that because I've never played sport ball a day in my life, but I'm like, I know coaches do this, but which team is this applicable to? So apparently in football, they have plays planned out for every possible scenario. And I feel like going into implementing change, you kind of have to prep for that. It's like packing for a trip. You don't do that without checking the weather. You have to think, okay, what am I going to do if my child does this? What am I going to do if my child does this? What if I do this and it doesn't work out? You kind of have to prep when implementing change so that it can go as smoothly as possible in the moment. Because there are most definitely different levels of knowing. There's knowing in our head, knowing what we are supposed to do. That's our self-talk and our commitment to our values and goals for our family. Then there's knowing with your heart, which is often what happens when we go into something without a plan. And when it comes to working with our kids, that's quite dangerous because they have the ability to melt our heart. And mom guilt is real. So our child gets upset. Something doesn't go well. That's when that negative self-talk comes in, and that's when the mom guilt comes in and we stray from our original game plan. So it's important when implementing change that we identify, am I acting right now from what I know and plan to do, or am I acting right now off of impulse because I feel bad for my kid? It's important to listen and support your child without coercion, because convincing your child to do something only oftentimes feeds into their anxiety, increases and encourages those heightened emotions, and reinforces the problem behavior rather than teaching them an alternative solution. If we always rescue our kids when they struggle, then we eliminate their ability to learn and figure things out for themselves and to process and feel those emotions, because mom's always swooping in and I don't have to feel that way. Again, back to the mom guilt, that's real. And it's important to kind of have that recognition going into things. Teach your child with confidence and ensure not to verbally attend to the verbal protest or problem behavior. I don't want to eat the chicken nuggets. I know you don't want to eat the chicken nuggets. We are validating that it's okay that they don't want to eat the chicken nuggets, while at the same time, we're trying to get them to chicken nuggets was a really bad example because I think I've yet to meet a kid that doesn't eat those. However, our actions and our words are not aligning. We're telling them we want them to try this new food, but we're telling them that it's okay that they don't want to. So we want to come to them with those reassurance, and we want to be there and be supportive for them while making sure that our words are aligning with what we're asking them to do.
Are you ready?
Yes. So, in summary, remind yourself of the bigger picture, the reason why you chose to implement change, whether that be for yourself, your child, or your family. And if it's truly something that's important to you, then implement the techniques that are here today. Know that we're here to support you, and please, please, please ask us questions as we go through, because we want to make sure that the information that we are providing to you is applicable to you and your family. The end.
Sir, I have a question.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Now it's muted. Thanks, Lacy. Hi, my name is Teresa. I'm an occupational therapist. I worked at Heartspring about 10 years ago and left and worked in the school district. And then I'm back here because I love it here. I love how everybody, we do things like this and we cooperate and work together to all become better therapists. And I really love the dedication of the families that we work with, and that we're really able to work together to help children reach their potential. I have worked in pediatrics most of my career. I've also worked with the adult population. I've worked in the hospital, outpatient, public school, and home-based settings. So I feel like it might sound like I've jumped around a lot, but I feel like it's given me an opportunity to see families in all of their environments. And that has given me, I feel like, a lot of insight to different things, and what it's just given me a little bit more insight. So my passion is providing tools and strategies to help children overcome obstacles. And a big part of that is empowering families to feel confident in their ability to help their children.
I think we had a question. Lily, did you have a question?
sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
You're okay.
Yeah, I had a question like about the coercion thing. So is that like you're meaning just like for the things that we tell our kids to do? Is that what you're meaning to, Lacy? Like if you clean your room, you like the reward thing. Is that what you're mentioning?
If the reward is offered before the behavior, then no, that's reinforcement. That's not bribery. Coercion is when you have to convince your child to do that which you've asked them to do. So you tell them that it's time to take a bath, and they fall to what we're talking about, feeding. So
yeah,
you tell them that it's time to come eat, and they don't want to come to the table, and we're like, come on, you can do it. And you're just kind of coercing them the entire way there, taking them by the lead and getting them from point A to point B, rather than just the immediate follow through. So we are going to the table, come on, let's go, is what I mean with the coercion. So with the coercion, it's the continual progression to get where you want them to go rather than the immediate follow through for the directive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I know we're talking about the feeding or the feeding, but for example, like with my son, like I'm a single mom, so I have like a lot of that. Like I ask like in my nicest voice, my nicest way possible, several 10 times, and And then, you know, it gets to the time that you're just like so tired to like repeating yourself because he's constantly like doing something else. And he's about to be 8 now. And I feel like if we have to give him, I have to give him some kind of, how you say, like not the chore, it's like the chores, but like the responsibility of doing, but it's just, I'm having such a hard time like making him follow through. And I spend like so many time because, and I believe I never got diagnosed with ADHD, but I know as far as I do learn stuff about him, that because he also have ADHD, but I have ADHD in my brain. It has to be, because as much as videos that I watch, I'm the same way, and like I'm trying to control, but then like all the little things, then it triggers my ADHD. And then I was like, you know what, forget it, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back into that one of two routes where we either get frustrated and we either go lax or we overreact. So we're either going to give up or we're going to push harder, and it's going to end in the power struggle. So I think that that's where just more of that, I want to say compliance training without going all technical, but we tell our child it's time to come to the table. And we have to make a choice in that moment. Are we going to go and we are going to assist our child to the table and engage in that? Or are we going to sit and wait? So it's kind of just again, it goes back to that pre-planning. Today, this is what I can do. Today, this is how I'm going to respond. And then remaining consistent with that, because I think that that will greatly decrease your negative self-talk because you already have a plan in place. And that could change because, I mean, we're not the same person every day. So there are going to be some days where you're going to be like, you know what, I really need to work on this today. And there's going to be days where you're going to be like, I have a headache today, and today mom can't do that. But you remain consistent with your plan throughout the day, because it's that inconsistency. It's the, well, sometimes mom lets me do this and sometimes mom lets me do that, where we don't see progression because there's not that consistency for them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I'm Lisa. Sometimes it's almost like our kids are like so much alike, no matter what's in them, because they're all like pre-wired, I swear, to do that whole, can we do it now? 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 Because our son would do that for like 2 weeks solid if I didn't like either rip my hair out or something. And it's like, finally, you know, I was watching an episode of Young Sheldon this week, and that's what he did. And it's like, yeah, I can see the similarities now, because it's like they just keep wearing you down, wearing you down, wearing you down until
I feel like
fine, we'll go.
That goes back to the knowing with your head and knowing with your heart. And I think that they do that because they know that those are the buttons for your heart. You keep pushing them, you keep pushing them. This is how we get mom to do what we want to do.
So how do you stop that? Because that's what my son is being like ever since Christmas. Like, is I want a Nintendo Switch. Everybody has a Nintendo Switch. Why don't I have a Nintendo Switch? And it doesn't matter how many times I show it to him, that I prove it to him that it costs too much, I can't afford it, or no, you don't have to be like everybody else, and I just can't afford. So I show him like, you don't have enough money. I don't have enough money. Then he goes and pick up his pig bank with the pennies, and he's like, but I have enough money, so here you go. And like, let's go now. Are we going today? Are we going today? I swear, since Christmas, that's all I hear, like from the time that he wakes up to the time that he goes to bed. So what do you do that like for that when they don't seem to, pictures doesn't work. I do work a lot with pictures. As you can see in my background, like I teach remote too. So I'm like, this is my little office that I created here in this room. But so no matter what I do or how much I try to explain to him, it doesn't seem for him to understand until, or I pick up and figure out a way to buy this thing, or if I don't know, putting myself in debt and buying this thing. And I don't know.
Remain consistent with your no. At the end of the day, the answer is no. We can't get one of those. We have explained that to him, so we know that he knows that. And so that's where you plan with your head, and you know that the answer is no, and that talking him through it and telling him all of the reasons why did not get the progress. And so now it's just no means no.
So we're going to go ahead and talk about some positioning now. So when you're talking about feeding, the first thing is to consider is what it looks like. Be sure your child's seat is a good fit for them. And what does that mean? That means if they're in a high chair, if that's what's appropriate, or a booster seat or regular chair, are their feet on the floor, or are they resting on a surface? Dangling feet is not conducive to having a lot of control. So if your back isn't supported and your bottom isn't supported and your feet are not supported, then you don't have that stability to give you more control for self-feeding. So this isn't so much about picky eaters, but it's an important thing for all eaters. And I have seen not a ton of times, but I have seen a child who is a very picky eater and doesn't eat anything, and we gave her lots of support where she wasn't slumping and she wasn't slouching, and she was able to eat more. She just felt more secure, and she was felt more safe eating. So you look at the feet, you want to look at the back and make sure that their back is supported and they're not sliding out of the chair. If they are sliding out of the chair, and we all see that in therapy sometimes where a kiddo doesn't want to sit in the chair and they slide out, you can put a piece of Dicem. If you all are familiar with Dicem, you can use it to line shelves. It's kind of a non-sticky. I thought I had some out, but I do not. There's some, I have some right here. It's like a kind of a sticky fabric. You can put that on, and you can put it on their seat, and then they won't slide out because they'll kind of be stuck there. Let's see. If they are slouching over to the side, you can roll up a towel or a washcloth, and you can give them a little additional support on the side. If their depth of their seat is too long for them, and they have like a little gap between their back and the seat, you can stick a little towel or a book or something back there to give them a little bit more support. So that's just something. Oh, and then the table and the tray should always be elbow height, if at all possible. So, the rule to remember is 90, 90, 90, 90 degrees at the hips and the feet and the knees and the feet. And that should help you a little bit with giving them a secure place to sit. Another thing that might help if a child is slumping down a lot and they're or leaning on the table, you can try putting a little mirror in front of them, and kids love to look at themselves. It might pop them up so that they can be more engaged. And sometimes that really helps children feed themselves. If they're looking at themselves, they kind of get a kick out of that. Thank you, Belinda. Setting up for meals, I encourage, Lacy was talking about family meals. I encourage family meals. I think we live in such a busy world. Parents are going to therapy, going to sports, or going to the drive-thru at McDonald's or whatever to feed their child. I really encourage to try to find, a meal a day that you are sitting at the table together, and you do just kind of put the world on pause and have that. And a lot of beautiful things can come out of that. I say put technology away. I mean, a lot of families will sit at the table and they'll still have an iPad, and someone will be reading a book. Put all that stuff away and just use it as an opportunity to engage with each other. Some benefits of that, if you have a picky eater and then you have, older children or children who are not as picky of eaters, they get to see that. They get to see that modeled for them, their parents, their siblings eating without just eating all the food. So I think that's very important. And they also get to witness some of the social skills, the communication, and the using the utensils properly and all of those things. So those are, it's just a chance to model that and then and be more comfortable with it. You can give children age appropriate jobs to help get them more involved in the process. So depending on how old that child is, obviously, they can help set the table, they can serve food, and they can pour drinks. So they get all those opportunities, and even doing that, serving food is a chance to, it's an exposure to different foods if they're a picky eater, but we'll go into that a little bit later too. Let's see. Other ideas that can make dinner an event, that make it an event so it's more fun for them to come to the table. My children used to love candlelight dinners. So we would, you know, make kind of a fancy dinner, but not really fancy because you don't want them breaking all your good stuff. But we would have candlelight dinner. You can have them help make placemats for the table, or you can make them fun placemats for the table. Conversation can be, you know, finding conversations for the kids. Like there's different conversation cards, if you've heard about those, if you're looking for something to engage your children more, which are just different questions or topics you can bring up. You can talk about highs and lows of the day, something great that happened to you today, and maybe something not so great. If anybody has any ideas of other conversations or ideas for that, please chime in. Thank you. Equipment and tools, age appropriate feeding utensils are important. So I have pulled some things out to show you. So me and my fancy technology skills. So can you see this? Here we go. So just, you know, handles, spoons and forks with bigger handles like this for littler kids. It's really hard for them to, any version really is helpful. Just something that's bigger for them to hold on to so they don't, it just makes it a little bit easier. We also have, there's different bowls and plates that have suctions that stick to the table that can be very helpful. This cool little mat has separate, so when kiddos don't like their food to touch, or even if you're putting a less preferred food here and then the preferred food here, so they're exposed to it, they get to see it. And this also doesn't slide. I think this one is from Walmart, so it's kind of a cool thing. Belinda is going to go more into cups, I believe, and so I'm not going to say much about that right now. I think this is kind of a fun plate. If you guys remember from the day, the little magnet guy with the, that you can make the beard and the mustache. It's another fun thing if you're just looking for another way to make mealtime a little bit more fun. And we did talk a little bit about using Dyson to help with things sliding. You can use that as well on the table as well as on your seat. And just remember that children go through many phases, and it is so normal for kids to go through that phase where they drop their food off the plate, or off the high chair, whatever, and just focus on the positive and praise them for the behaviors that you want them to have, and just keep giving them opportunities. Don't let that be a roadblock for you as like, oh, I stopped giving them the fork because they threw it on the floor every time, or they, whatever. Still give them that opportunity. Just don't, I would encourage you not to make a big fuss of it. Just give them another opportunity, or start to recognize when you think that's going to happen. And like, maybe they take 2 bites with the spoon, and then you let them use their hands. So you're kind of building that expectation and those experiences, and you're giving them reinforcement for those things that you want them. Oh, wow, you took that bite. That was good. And then just kind of move on past there. And every exposure counts. While we never want to force food on a child, we want to provide opportunities to interact with food that can help decrease their aversion or their anxieties to different foods. So there's so many ways you can do this. They can help with meal planning and preparation. And obviously this is all age appropriate as well. There's different activities you can do where you make stamps out of carrots or potatoes, and then they paint with it. You can do that. You can cut the vegetables up and they can put it all in the salad. I think a really fun thing to do is to bake cookies together, because there's lots of textures. And I say, if you do it instead of eggs, use applesauce if you can, because then they can eat it and they can touch it and it's safe. But pouring those different textures, because you have powdery, you have grainy, you have wet, they can pour them into the bowl, they can turn on the mixer, and they can help you. That's a good activity for exposing them to food and developing motor skills and interaction and positive interaction with them. And we mentioned earlier, serving food to the family. There's just another exposure, and even making sure that they serve themselves too. Even if they don't want it, they can have it on their plate so they can get used to seeing it there. And then, at the end, you can even have them scoop it off the plate. So then they're once having another exposure to that food. And then food play. Thank you.
Also, what I used to do when Patrick was younger, I would have him, we wouldn't, just use a beater or something for the cookie dough. I would have because of the PT aspect of it, I would have him put his hands in and mix and feel how either stiff that dough was or how sticky it was or whatever, because I think that kind of helped him also imagine what it was going to turn into later. And even if I had to throw some of that out or all of that out and start fresh later, that was okay too. But then we would talk about, well, what do you think this is going to taste like later? And we would go into all of the aspects of feeling and touching and smelling. And then later we could taste it, like you said, without the raw egg in. Applesauce is a very good idea, because you could taste it then to say, oh yeah, it tastes different now than it's going to when their cookies bake later. So he was really into that.
And that's an excellent example. And like really just talking about and smelling and touching, all of those different parts of it are really, really important. I think that's really great.
Yeah, because I'd even have him like smear some on the cookie sheet. How does it feel to do that? We get very textural, with it, just so he would be able to feel things and know how heavy it was, or the whole aspect of it, the whole shebang. If there was anything chunky in it, he could feel that.
And if a child is more adverse to touching it and they don't want to touch it, that's okay. You can let them stir it with a spoon and they'll get there. I often will accidentally spill it on them or touch the texture to them, the whipped cream or the cookie dough or whatever. And then it's like a little freeze up of looking at it, and then, oh, whoops. And then we just wipe it off, but that's still another chance. And it's not threatening. It's not forcing. It's just an accident. That's another exposure. So I think those are all great ideas.
And Teresa, you had talked about conversations and customizing your placemats, and I have actually done that, where I've put different pictures on the placemats of possible or potential topics that you could talk about at mealtime, and be like, hey, which one of these do you want to talk about tonight? And then the child kind of has an input as to how they want the conversation to flow.
So you're really giving them the power. And I think that's really, really important. Mm-hmm.
I like that you're adding in all the senses, and that's part of one of my slides, because look at all the language that you're adding into that as well. Not only working on swallowing or feeding at that point, you're also adding in all of this new words that you can introduce with the senses. So I love that you do that, Lisa, and everybody.
I think you guys, and I think one thing that's really important in all of this, and I know Lacy was speaking to this too. It's like, if it goes south, if you have this great plan and all of your stuff, your recipe just goes really south, as therapists, we've all had sessions like that. It's like, we've all had moments like that as parents and as therapists. And it's like, sometimes you just go back to take a deep breath for yourself and just remember that you have your long-term goal, and just make that for feeding, it's important to that in that moment to make it a positive experience. So maybe we scrap the meal, and Lacy might have a behavioral component to add to that, but sometimes you just have to save the moment and not end up where everybody's crying and we're more anxious about the food. Just try to save the moment and remember that it's just about that experience being a positive experience.
especially if it's a new food, because the likelihood of them liking everything that we try to get them to eat is not realistic. So say you present broccoli for the first time and everything goes south, hey, your child might not like broccoli. So that's not to forfeit food expansion. That just means we'll try something else tomorrow.
Or we'll try broccoli another time.
That's right.
Or we'll paint
exposure,
with
exposure.
Right. Or we'll paint with broccoli. We don't have to eat
Right.
it. We can do other stuff with it. So we're becoming desensitized.
Or we'll
Right.
talk about how can we make it taste better.
Oh,
Yes.
You know?
Cheesy.
If
like
you don't like,
it in ranch, right?
yeah, really. If you don't like cheese on it, then let's try a little butter, because butter makes everything better, right?
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready?
Yes.
All right. So I am Belinda Allen, and I graduated from WSU with my master's in speech pathology in December of 2007. I did a brief stint in the hospitals and then went to the public schools. Then I switched again to geriatrics. So I worked in skilled nursing facilities. And then 2 years ago, this January, I was hired at Heartspring. Recently, I'd say since I have been at Heartspring, really kind of developed a passion for helping kids with a feeding disorder or maybe some anxiety towards eating foods that they're not accustomed to, like maybe a certain color or a certain texture or something like that. So I am going to talk about signs of picky eaters. Some of the signs may be that they only drink their meals. Another sign may be that they look at their food thoroughly, but they're not going to touch it, they're not going to smell it, they're not going to even try to taste it. They may have a meltdown or display a heightened level of anxiety when it's mealtime or when they sense that mealtime is almost near. Have a limited range of foods that they'll accept, and that again is where maybe your child only eats foods that are green, or they will only eat foods that are yellow, like mac and cheese and chicken nuggets. Those are high frequency foods for some of my kiddos. Some possible underlying reasons for maybe why your kid might be a picky eater. Again, they might have some medical complexities. Do they have a disorder? Down syndrome kiddos have a larger tongue, so there's not as much room in their mouth. Actually, their tongue is regular sized. It's their jaws that are small, so the food may be scared of it, is what I guess I'm trying to say. Do they have a tongue or a lip tie? That prevents being or feeling safe when we're eating as well. Maybe you introduced lumpy or mixed consistency foods later on, just for whatever reason. Again, that pressure to eat, and we all do it because we all want our kids to be happy, healthy, and we want them to eat. So it's like, you have to, you have to, you have to. We kind of sometimes need to step away from that. Have they experienced a trauma such as choking, or some kids I've seen have actually had food withheld from them. So now eating becomes a traumatic experience for them. Do they have some sensory issues? There are some textures that even at 42, I will not touch. So it's a sensory thing. I refuse to eat hot dogs because of the texture. They smell delicious when they're on the grill, but I cannot bring myself to eat one. And then their appetite, maybe their appetite just isn't where it needs to be. When do we start worrying? We kind of start worrying when there's like an absent or slow gain in their weight. You never want to wait for them to grow out of it because they may not ever grow out of it. You can look for 1, 2, or 3 all hallmarks of eating. So do they have a lack of interest? Do they have distrust due to the sensoriness of food? Or do they have fear or aversive behaviors due to consequences, such as, are they going to choke? Might they vomit? Gagging is a big one. All those kind of things. Let's look at maybe why it's hard for them to take a bite. You know, we provide our kids with a plate full of food most of the time. But we need to look at why it might be hard for them to take a bite. And again, there can be several reasons. So we want to try to celebrate what they can do. So let's start with a food that they can eat and then add in something that they won't eat, so that there's that safety net, but then there's also the exposure of a new food that they might not want to try. Model ways to use the 5 senses. And this is again where Lisa was talking about, talk about what it feels like. What does it smell like? Allow them to play in their food. If you have to strip them down naked, if that's age appropriate, to play in their spaghetti, let them play. It really is a lot of fun. Also, we want to go slow. We don't want to put 10 new foods in front of them and then expect them to try every single one of them. Maybe just try 1 new food a week or a day or even in a month. So you want to make sure that they have that exposure, but without being forced to technically eat it. Melanie Potok is where I get most of my information from. She actually was able to come to Heartspring in 2019. Was supposed to come in 2020, but we have the pandemic. Is supposed to come again this year, but I get a lot of information from her. She wrote a book, a cookbook of sorts, called Adventures in Veggieland, and it is a plethora of ways to make food fun. There is a caterpillar of cucumbers, carrots, and peppers. So the kids, you can help slice. They can help you slice the cucumbers. They can help you cut up the peppers, and then you design it on your plate, or a placemat maybe that they've made so it looks like a caterpillar, and then you talk about it. Maybe you read The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and every time the caterpillar takes a bite, maybe the kid either touches it or smells the food, or even tries to take a bite, or even just maybe touches it to their lips. I'll do a lot of lip touching because at that time they're still breathing, so they're getting the smell in, they're feeling it with their lips and their fingers. And they're more apt to want to actually try to put it in their mouth and taste it. When offering foods to picky eaters, you want to make sure that you're offering small portions. I don't know about you, but when you go to a restaurant and you order something and they bring out this plate and it is just huge, you think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to eat that. Well, for our kids who are picky eaters, it's the same thing, only they feel that if they don't finish it, they're going to get into trouble, essentially. So just start with a small portion. Keep it underwhelming and not overwhelming. When we were talking earlier about having the kids actually helping serve at the dinner plate, have them sit at the head of the table and they have a teaspoon or like a ladle and they get to divvy out your portion sizes on your plates, but they will ask you, do you want a sample size or do you want a regular size? So everyone has to get everything that's on their plate. Everyone has to get everything that's being served on their plate, whether it be a sample size or a regular size, and you have to take at least 1 bite, or it just has to sit there. Snacks are small with no seconds. If we're eating snacks of preferred foods all day long, why are we going to eat a meal that has foods that we don't want to eat? So the recommendations are the snack should be the size of their palm. So if you have a 2-year-old and they're wanting goldfish, it literally should just be this amount, and that's it, no more. They're done. If you have a child who has medical complications and they need more calories per day, you can offer more frequently. You can offer more frequent snacks, but they still should be small and no seconds. We want to limit milk to meal times because milk is very filling. It also has other adverse reactions such as causing constipation. And because it is filling, it decreases their appetite and their hunger. So guess what? Mom's going to give me milk with my snack or my meal. I'm going to guzzle it down and then I'm done because I'm full. But in 45 minutes, I'm hungry again because the milk is processed and now that food is put away and I know she's going to give me a snack of what I want. So limit the milk, put it in a cup with a straw, a small cup with a straw. And once the milk is gone, then we have water. You can have water to drink. You want to follow the 3 E's, that is expose, explore, and expand. So exposing them to foods in new and differing ways, such as making the hungry caterpillar out of the cucumber. I worked with a child who wouldn't eat avocado, which is fine. He wouldn't eat corn, which is fine. I added salt and pepper, and he ate the whole entire avocado and the whole entire cup of pepper. So that was a new way to introduce a food that's simple, and everyone probably has salt and pepper in their house. Explore, again, playing with your food. Maybe they go to the grocery store with you and you say, we need to find 4 fruits and vegetables that are red today, because today our color is red. So we're going to find 4 fruits and vegetables that are red. So they're actually having to shop with you. And while they're shopping, they can smell, they can see, they can touch, they can all that exploration. And then expand. Once their food curiosity is established, it's so much easier to expand. Like, oh, look, this kind of looks like this food. Let's try it. Or just different ways of expanding. What can you do? First off, we should probably stop using the term picky eater when our children are in front of us, because what happens to our kids is they live up to the labels that we provide or assign to them. I recently evaluated a kid who I probably heard maybe 25 times that he just doesn't talk. Why would he then? Because he has heard you tell everybody he just doesn't talk. So we need to stop giving our kids those kind of labels. With feeding, we need to remember that they are learning eaters, they are taste testers, and they are food explorers. Then I have some ways to just kind of make it fun. So again, Melanie Potok gave us a ton of ideas, and one of those ideas is to use an ice cube tray. Sounds weird, right? What you're going to do is you're going to call it the nibble tray, and you're only going to take like 5 of those little ice cube compartments. One of them might have blueberries in it. One of them might have some little corn nuggets in it. One of them might have something like shredded cheese or something you know that they're going to eat. And then 2 other compartments are going to have like 1 or 2 pieces of cereal that you want them to try, but they're kind of reluctant. And the same with another one, another food, maybe 1 or 2 pieces of something that they're a little hesitant to eat. Because when it's in front of them, you're expanding their exploration, you're making them have it right there in front of them so they can see it and explore with it and everything like that. Use divided plates during meals. So what this means is some kids don't like their foods to touch, but it's also okay to have the divided plate, and in one of the far corners, put all 3 or 4 of the foods that you're having for that meal. So up in the corner, there's some peas, there's 1 piece of broccoli, and there's 1 chicken nugget. And then in each of the other compartments are those foods that you're serving. And you tell them that this is the friend spot. These foods are learning to be friends with each other, and that's okay. Yeah, so they're learning to be friends. And then they can, I mean, you can just build upon that. Like, our foods are friends, our foods are our friends. You can touch it, you can smell it. And then again, portion size, we've talked about that. Everyone at the table gets at least a tablespoon of every food being served. And then again, you can let the kid be the master chef sitting at the master spot at the table. Do you want a spoon? Do you want a sample size, or do you want a full regular size? I came across tasting spoons last night and I thought this was so cool. I'm gonna have to get some. So she had the little bitty plastic spoons that you get when you go to like an ice cream shop and you get to taste the ice cream. You put those in you give those to the child, and while you're eating, they may take a bite with just one of those little tasting spoons, and then you have an empty bowl next to them that they can throw that tasting spoon away, and just keep letting them eat with those. They're plastic, so they're washable. It's fun. It's a little teeny tiny bite, so they're more apt to try taking more bites than just 1 or 2. Be cool about it. Don't over exaggerate it. Don't every time they take a bite say, yay, you took a bite. Good job. Or don't even acknowledge that they took a bite until they've taken a bite, a couple of times. Some kids don't like all that attention, and by having every bite that they take acknowledged, they become more fearful of eating, because then the spotlight's on me and I don't want that. So that was kind of it. Were there any questions for me? I told you I go fast when I get nervous and talk.
All right, well, if nobody has any questions, we will end. We are going to segue into our parent care group. So if you're interested in that and don't have the link, you can just email the care team real fast and we'll send you the link. Thank you guys for coming. Once again, this was recorded. So if you want access to the recording or the PowerPoint, just email care@heartspring.org and we will get that over to you. And if you guys are interested, we will see you guys next month on the 3rd Saturday.